Counsel, may it please the court.
Yes, ma'am.
The last moments of Aiden McClendon's life were spent strapped in a car seat. A car seat is designed to protect children from accidents. However, what you are going to find happened on January 29, 2016 was no accident. Instead, it was the culmination of gang violence. You see, on January 29, 2016, Tamisha Brown was simply taking her grandmother home from work. Her grandmother lived at 710 Spearing Street. Tamisha Brown had no idea that when she drove into the front yard of her grandmother's house, that violence was lurking just around the corner. She had no idea that these two defendants, who have been introduced to you as Henry Hayes, let me introduce you to them. Henry Hayes back then was known as Cracker Jack, a member of Problem Child Entertainment. And Kwame Richardson was known as JB, obviously not his initials, but it stands for Just Blow. Those two defendants were inside of a small white Corolla hunting for a rival gang member. That rival gang member went by the name of Reginald Ducey Williams. He was a member of the group 187, which you're going to learn is the murder code in California. Reginald Ducey Williams was hanging out with his friend on the side yard when Tamisha Brown innocently pulled up to drop her grandmother off. When Tamisha Brown put her car in park and the grandmother was gathering up her things, that's when Reginald Williams decided that he was going to come from the side yard and then come over and greet his cousin, Tamisha Brown. It was a brief discussion because these two defendants were rolling up almost simultaneously. Reginald Williams cut his conversation up short. He looked up and then he abruptly turned and tried to make it back to the side yard. At that time, ladies and gentlemen, that's when these two defendants, armed with firearms, one a Mac 90, the other one a Glock 26, started to unload on that car. Tamisha Brown was caught in the middle of Reginald Williams trying to make it back to that side yard and these defendants' intent to kill him. Her car was struck over and over and over and over again. When she realized that her car was taking on fire, all she could think about to do was drive. Just drive, just drive. She honestly made it through a very small location on the side yard. Her back rear tire striking a step, shredding it. She didn't care because she knew that her grandmother, who was sitting in the backseat, Mary Thomas, saw that Aiden was hit. All she could see at that point in time was this graze wound on the top left part of his head and that he had slumped over. Mary Thomas was calling desperately over and over to 911, trying to give him as much information as she could. As Tamisha Brown was calling her mother, Rhonda McDowell, screaming, "Someone shot my baby. Someone shot my baby." And all she could do was drive, drive, drive. In Shands, they were waiting for him because Mary Thomas alerted them. Tamisha Brown threw open the doors of her car. She went and she grabbed her baby out of that car seat and she gave that baby over to medical personnel. What you're going to find is what they could do was nothing at that point. It was too late. You see, because all the hopes that Mary Thomas saw that it was just a graze wound to the head were dashed. Because that baby was hit in the left arm. That baby was fatally wounded through his left back. And there was nothing they could do to save him. You see, Tamisha Brown couldn't protect her baby. Mary Thomas definitely couldn't. Medical personnel could do nothing at that point to protect him from the gang violence that happened on January 29, 2016. In this trial, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to transport you from a location very different than where we sit here today. In a courtroom of law, it's quiet, it's nice, but instead, we are going to introduce you to a place where shootings happen in the broad daylight. It is a place where young men associate with gangs. It is a place where being shot at and shooting at people gives you status within that gang. That is the place that we are going. I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, it is not going to be pretty. But what I can promise you is that it is the reality of the streets involved in this case. At the hospital, that is not where this case ends. You see, as medical personnel were working to try to save Aiden, let's go back to the scene at 710 Spearing Street, where police officers were putting up crime scene tape, doing everything that they can to preserve the evidence that they found there. And what you will find and what you will learn is that right in the street, some in the dirt, the detectives started to meticulously collect firearm evidence. You will learn that the detectives, the crime scene detectives in this case, collected 8 9mm shell casings. That was the clue. They collected them, they bagged them for further processing later on. And I'll get back to that. And then they went through tracing each and every bullet strike that they could through the house, through 3 houses. Because what you're going to find is 710 Spearing Street is a big white house with green trim. And then right behind it are 3 additional row houses almost, okay? So some of these bullets, make your way down Outer Street and make another right. There was a casing. That gave the detectives another clue. Because as the detectives started their investigation, they started to learn that this wasn't just a random shooting, okay? There were people in the side yard that had been associating with a gang called 187. I told you about one, Reginald Ducey Williams. And his friends were in the side yard. His cousin, Thomas Brown, not associated, and his friend, Jordan Harris, that the gang used because basically he had a legitimate car and they could ride around in it without any problems, they think, from the police. They were all congregating right before the murder occurred. You will learn that Jordan Harris had picked Reginald Williams up and transported him over there. They were in the side yard before the shooting happened. They were hanging out, doing what they were doing. And you will learn that there's something called Facebook Live, where they were live on camera, showing their locations, calling out the other gang. And these locations are very distinct. You see, 187 occupies the territory of essentially east of downtown. It's called Out East. And they have a particular location that encompasses some hot spots, I would say. One is called the Yellow Store. It is a small convenience store that is painted bright yellow, famous to them because they put it into a song. And then there's a yellow house that's located at 1148 Pippin Street, just right around the corner from 710 Spearing Street. And then you have 710 Spearing Street, a location that they don't normally hang out, but they were showing on that particular day. They were calling each other out, pull up, and that's when the rival gang, these 2 defendants' gangs, Problem Child Entertainment, pull up and commit the shooting. The detectives were learning that right after the shooting, Reginald Ducey Williams tried to shoot back in the side yard. There was one .223 shell casing that was found in the backyard, and then his gun jammed. He got in the car and he disappeared. He was not cooperative with the police investigation, and you will learn that that's almost a telltale sign of the code of silence that they operate under. You will learn that after the shooting, the detectives continued to collect evidence. One of the most important pieces of evidence that you will see, ladies and gentlemen, is Tamisha Brown's white Toyota Corolla. Remember I said that they tracked every bullet through the houses? Well, her car bore evidence that relates directly back to these defendants. That is, that her car was struck 10 times. One on the side in the front hood, multiple through the back of her car. You must be sitting there wondering, 3 people occupying one car, how did only one person get hit? Let me explain it. There was one that came through his arm with a big gaping wound here and an exit wound near his elbow that then lodged itself in the back of the passenger seat. The detectives tore that car apart. They opened it up, they found the projectile, and they collected it. As they continued on in their investigation, they knew that at the time this crime occurred, that these 2 defendants were occupying a white Toyota Corolla. So they started looking, scouring. And just like I told you that 187 has a territory just east of downtown, well, these defendants, gang, have a territory that's on the northwest side of town, 45th and Moncrief area, near the Hilltop Apartments. That's where they hang out. They start looking, and then they find it. There's a white Toyota Corolla backed into a parking space, so that the law enforcement officer that was looking for it couldn't just drive by and say, oh, that tag, we're not going to worry about it. No. The law enforcement officer saw it. She got out of her car. She walked around. She looked at the tag, and she realized that it was carjacked. That's important. Because when she found out, she reported it to the police. They took that car, that white Toyota Corolla, used by these defendants, and they tore it apart. They really didn't have to look all that far because there were some 9mm shell casings. One caught up underneath the wiper, and then a couple that were caught right underneath the hood. They took them, and they collected them. Let me stick there. The 9mm shell casings that they collected underneath that hood and underneath that wiper, guess what? It matched the same casings that were at the crime scene left on the ground. Remember I told you that there was a MAC 90 used in this case? There were no shell casings at the crime scene that relate to that particular firearm. But the sheriff's office, and I told you they tore it apart. And by that, I mean they took out the whole back seat. They took out all of the carpet. And then an eagle-eyed crime scene investigator said, what's that? And then she found one 7.62 by 39 shell casing lodged in the back underneath the carpet. And then she tore out the back seat. She collected that shell casing, and then she put it into the property room. What you're going to find is that bullet that passed through Aiden's arm and into the back of that chair matched the MAC 90 that I'm going to tell you about later. That one shell casing that was in the back seat of that suspect car matched the MAC 90 I'm going to tell you about. The police were on it. You will learn that then they started to develop problem child entertainment as suspects. You're going to learn that they knew of Cracker Jack and they knew of JB. You will learn that once they started looking through those areas, they served a search warrant on a known drug house of PCE. When they served that search warrant, you will learn that someone was able to escape, that is, run away. But along the path, right in the house right next door to the place that is a trap house, or in other words, a drug house, okay, the police found a MAC 90 that was discarded on the top roof. They collected that firearm. They compared it to the bullet they found in Tanisha Brown's car and to the casing that they found in the suspect car, and it was a match. You will learn that they continued to investigate. They continued and continued. Moving forward, they were up at Buffalo Wild Wings on Super Bowl Sunday. And when they were there, you're going to see video surveillance of this defendant, Cracker Jack, and that defendant, JB, hanging out on Super Bowl. And they were with other members of Problem Child Entertainment. Henry Hayes' sister, Cynthia, that goes by the nickname of Cint. Rayshawn Jackson, who goes by the nickname of Ray. Danny Haddon, Montico Brown were all there. They were hanging out. The police then come up there, and then there's a traffic stop conducted of this defendant's dad's truck. You will learn that during that traffic stop, they took the individuals out. And then they looked into the back part of that car, and then there was another firearm found. It was a Glock 26 that was found discarded in a bucket in the back. The police collected that firearm, and then they did further testing. You will learn that the firearm that was found in the back of Henry Hayes' truck matched the shell casings that were collected from the crime scene, and they also matched the shell casings from the suspect car. They didn't stop there with that firearm. That is that the Glock 26 was further analyzed for DNA. They swabbed it, and you will learn that they used a technology called star mix. That is, that when they swab an item for touch DNA, you're going to hear all about it. That is that the skin cells that might rub off when you touch something, can't see it with the naked eye, but then they take a swab and they swab it, they swab the whole area, they come up with lower levels, okay, because it's not as DNA rich as blood, but it still has information. And then in this case, the Glock 26 had a mixture of 3. You will learn that when they use the star mix technology, it's for probability. That is, how significant are these results on this particular firearm? And what you will learn is that Kwame Richardson, JB, was the first contributor to that mixture on the firearm. Let me continue with the DNA. In the suspect vehicle, they did the same thing. They swabbed the driver's side compartment. And then they found Kwame Richardson's DNA inside that car. Remember I told you that that car was carjacked and I said it was important? Well, let me back up because the timeline is tight. That is that the murder of Aiden McClendon occurred January 29, 2016 at 6:05 p.m. Let's rewind. January 28th, in the early morning hours, there was a lady. She was 8 months pregnant. She had gotten into a fight with the father of her child, and she said, you know what, I'm just going to take a break. Her name is Shatoya Williams. She drove her white Toyota Corolla that I've been referring to as a suspect car, but really it was Shatoya Williams' car. She had no intent that this was ever going to be used in a crime. She went over there, she was taking a break, and then all of a sudden, there was this car that pulled in behind her while she was sitting in a park. And then out jumped two men trying to take her car, take her money, anything of value. And she was just like, you can have it. Don't hurt me. Don't hurt my baby. And you will hear how she perceived the two men to get into some type of argument about who's going to drive her car because it was newer. And then the shorter one got in the car and drove it away. You will learn that the person that she identified as one of the robbers, the one that drove her car away, his name is Sanquan Bradford. He goes by the nickname of Rondo. You will learn that everything in this case started to heat up. That is, the two gangs that I've been referencing weren't always at odds with one another. They weren't always beefing with each other. What you're going to learn is that they used to be not on part of the same gang, but they used to be friendly with one another. That is, they know each other almost intimately. But what happened is Rondo defected, that is from 187. He used to hang out with them, and he went over to PCE, Problem Child Entertainment, these defendants' gang, and Rondo that night decided on January 28, 2016, he was going to help PCE out. You will hear that he sent a text message to Crackerjack on his phone. He said, hey, I got a slider for sale. Slider, you're going to learn, is slang for a stolen car. I said slider, I'm sorry, stunner for sale. That is slang for a stolen car. Before Crackerjack could even respond, Crackerjack says, hey, how much? And then Sanquan responds back to Crackerjack, no, JB's already got it. What you're going to learn is that when this defendant, Kwame Richardson, went to go pick up that suspect car, he told Rondo, Sanquan Bradford, that they were going to slide on Friday. Well, guess what January 29, 2016 was? Friday. Literally hours after that car was carjacked. There were a couple of things that happened to heat these two groups up. One was the defection of Sanquan Bradford to go hang out with PCE. And the other, the one that happened before then, was the defection of an individual that used to hang out with these two defendants by the name of Breon Mason. He's the one that really set it off. Breon Mason goes by the nickname of D Rose. He used to hang out with PCE. There was an argument, a confrontation between D Rose and Hayes and other members of PCE. Had enough, then he started hanging out with 187. You will learn that there was a fight, a physical fight on November 14, 2016 at a club concert, Kodak Black. And at that physical fight, that is the two members, the recently defected D Rose, and then Sanquan Bradford at that point was still on 187's side, started fighting with PCE because they had struck another member of 187. You will hear that the fight goes on, and then if we can fast forward, that is November 14th, there was another critical incident that happened, which is there was a death in one of the gangs. 187's member, Avery Suge McKnight, his nickname was Suge, and they also refer to him as Bink, was murdered on Odessa Street. That, ladies and gentlemen, started a back and forth rap war between the two. You will learn that they don't just beef through Facebook and social media, they actually are rappers. But they don't rap like Nelly, where you can kind of dance your head to. This rap that you're going to be introduced to is called drill music. That is, they talk about what they have done. They talk about what they want to do. They call out the other side, they taunt them, and they say, bring it on. Here we are. We're posted up. We're not ducking any action. You're going to hear that a lot in those raps. Well, when Avery Suge McKnight was murdered, 187 made a response song called, and excuse my language, Fuck the City Up, okay? They made that song. They were telling them everything. That is, that they thought they were responsible, PCE, and that they were going to do whatever they needed to do. You're going to learn that at that time that they made F the City Up, there was a falling out with Sanquan, and he had gone to the other side. So in that song, Fuck the City Up, 187 calls out Rondo. They say, F Rondo, F Rondo. You will hear that. And then there's a response song made by PCE on top of that same beat called T on top of T. And you will hear that that is a major sign of disrespect if you take a beat that someone else has used and then put your own words on top of it, and you will hear all about what is in T on top of T. They beef back and forth. So here we are after Suge McKnight has been murdered. We're going to fast forward to January 25th, 2015. And on that day, you will hear that they were having a memorial for Suge McKnight. There was a big block party out there. And you will hear that there was a shooting of the 187 members at that particular December 25th day, Christmas Day. And there were no presents exchanged. Instead, it was only gunfire. Now move forward in time. January 6th, 2016. You will hear that Rondo, who you had earlier closer to, gets shot at multiple times. Kwame Richardson grabs up since baby, tries to run in the house, and then the shooting's over with. They don't let it go. These two defendants, along with Sanquan Bradford, load up in the car and start driving down the street, shooting at them. You will hear that 187, remember I said that they beef over social media, started calling this defendant, where his thing stands for just blow, just run. That's what they started calling him, taunting him. You will hear how they continue to shoot all the way down the street, all the way into out east territory. Now, fast forward to January 16th, 2016. You will see a series of 3 short videos, all captured from Henry Hayes' phone, where Henry Hayes is in a white Denali truck. How do we know? Because they got that truck from Sanquan Bradford. He provided them with a white Denali truck. And in that Facebook post, he's posting live, you will hear Henry Hayes talk about how he's looking for the ops and other things that he says. And one of the most telling things, remember I said they were hunting? Henry Hayes confirms it. These were a series of posts, January 16th, 2016, 9:46 a.m., 9:48 a.m., all a series of posts, and he's saying, it's open season on you ends. And then literally, 30 minutes later, remember I told you they're big kind of monikers in the out east territory. One is Cameron Thomas's house, the yellow house. Well, the police were on to 187 long before PCE, and they had put a pole cam up on the yellow house because Ron Thomas, who goes by the nickname of Killer Cam, sells drugs out of there. 187 gang members hang out there. The police were looking at him on this pole cam, and that pole cam captures 30 minutes later, after this defendant posts a shooting of those 187 gang members. The white Denali truck drives by, and then it turns around, it drives by, and then that's when the shots are let out. And Cameron Thomas will identify Kwame Richardson as a shooter, and this defendant, Henry Hayes, as the driver. They drive by. What is most notable is the type of situation. They don't call 911. You're going to learn that. Gang members, they duck behind cars. The shooting's over. They get up. Keep on walking. They keep on walking. You'll see them walking down the street as if nothing happened. Because we're going to fast forward just a little bit further in time, where PCE then does another shooting of 187 gang members, a few days leading up to Aiden McClendon's murder. Those incidents are not designed to prove that they're bad people. Remember, this is not a moral court. It is to give the full explanation of what happened to Aiden McClendon. You see, because Reginald Ducey Williams, on that particular day, didn't have any really personal animosity against these two defendants. What's most telling about this, and how you know that this is related to how they promote themselves within the gang, is the fact that it's just the fact that they could shoot one of them up, catch him slipping at his grandmother's house. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that no one in this case, almost every single witness that you're going to see that walks up off of these streets, remember I said it's not going to be pretty. They're not perfect, okay? They have issues. Felony convictions, sitting in prison, whatever they are, but they are. Ask yourself the questions before you just disregard their testimony. Remember, you have to fight your human instincts to just say, I don't like that person. I don't want to hang out with that person. Those aren't the questions. Did they have an opportunity to see and know the things about which they testified and compare their testimony with the other evidence in the case? Ladies and gentlemen, that's just some of the evidence that you will see during the course of this trial. It's not all of it, it's just some. But what you will know at the end of this trial, and the cold hard facts will remain, that is that these two defendants were motivated to kill Reginald Williams, not because they had any personal animosity against him. It's only because of who he associated with. And what you will learn is that all of those bullets that were intended for Reginald Williams killed that little boy. I've heard it been said that Aiden McClendon was killed by a stray bullet. You, ladies and gentlemen, will know differently. What you will know is that all of those bullets, every single one, contributed to Aiden McClendon's death, and that the intent behind them transferred from Reginald Williams to Aiden McClendon. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to ask that you find these defendants guilty of first-degree murder and the other counts in the indictment. Thank you.